Somewhere there is a photograph of you that you have no memory of being in. You are 2 years old. Someone is holding you up toward the camera. You are laughing at something just outside the frame, reaching for it with both hands, completely alive inside a moment that mattered enough for someone to freeze it forever. And you remember none of it. You do not remember the room. You do not remember the hands holding you. You cannot hear your own laugh. The first few years of your life are gone. Thousands of hours. Every single thing you ever did for the very first time. You learned to walk in those years. You learned to talk. You loved the people around you with your whole small body, and almost none of it survived in your mind. Most people assume those years are blank because nothing important happened yet, because a baby is too simple to remember anything worth keeping. But the real answer is far stranger than an empty room. Those memories were not missing, they were made. And then your own brain cleared them away on purpose. The blank space even has a name. Researchers call it childhood amnesia. Sigmund Freud pointed at it more than a century ago, unsettled by how grown adults could recall almost nothing before the age of 6 or 7, even though those are the very years a human being changes the most. He thought the mind was hiding those memories somewhere deep, burying them on purpose to protect you. He was wrong about the reason, but he was right that something strange was happening in there. Here is the part that breaks the usual story. You did remember. As a baby, you remembered things all the time. A 1-year-old recognizes faces. A 1-year-old knows which drawer the snacks live in, learns the word for dog, remembers exactly which toy was taken away an hour ago, and cries for it. The machinery for memory is already switched on and running. So the mystery was never whether babies can form memories. The mystery is where all of those memories go. A psychologist named Carole Peterson spent years chasing exactly that question. She gathered hundreds of children and asked them to describe their earliest memories, then came back and asked the same children again as they grew older. What she found was quietly haunting. Small children could clearly describe events from when they were only 2 or 3 years old, but as those same children aged, the early memories thinned out and dissolved. The memories were there. Then, year by year, they simply were not. On average, she found, the earliest memory a person can hold onto lands at around 3.5 years old. Almost everything before that line tends to wash away, so the forgetting is not instant. It is a slow erasing that happens quietly while you grow up. Why would a brain do that? Why build a memory just to take it apart again? To answer that, you have to look at the one part of the brain that almost never stops rebuilding itself. It sits deep in the center of your head, curled into the shape of a small seahorse, and it is called the hippocampus. Think of it as the part of you that writes new memories down onto the page. In a grown adult, that page is mostly stable. In a baby, it is a construction site that never closes for the night. This is where 2 neuroscientists, Frankland and Sheena Josselyn, found something remarkable. In the infant brain, the hippocampus is flooded with brand new neurons. New brain cells, arriving by the thousands, wiring themselves into the network at a furious, relentless pace. The plain word for this is neurogenesis. It simply means the birth of new neurons, and it sounds like nothing but good news. More brain cells, more growth, more raw power, but growth has a hidden cost. Every time a new neuron pushes its way into the network, it rewires the connections that were already sitting there. Picture a wall covered edge to edge in handwriting. Now picture new wires being shoved straight through that wall again and again every single day. The writing gets disturbed. The exact pathways that were holding a specific memory get scrambled by the very growth that makes a baby's brain so astonishing. Frankland and Josselyn tested this idea directly in young mice. When they slowed the flood of new neurons down, the young animals held onto their memories far longer. When they forced that same flood to speed up inside older animals, the memories vanished faster than they ever should have. So the forgetting is not a flaw in the design. It is the price of building an entire brain at full speed. Sit inside that idea for a moment. The reason you cannot remember being small is the very same reason you were able to learn so much, so fast. But new neurons are only half the story. There is a second reason those years slipped through your fingers, and it has to do with something you are still completely missing: words. For the first couple of years of your life, you had almost no language at all. You experienced everything directly, as raw sensation, with no quiet narration running underneath it. And memory, it turns out, leans far more heavily on language than it ever feels like it should. The little story you tell yourself about an event is part of how that event gets filed away for later. Two researchers, Gabriel Simcock and Harleen Hain, designed a clever experiment to prove exactly this. They built a strange little machine for young children, a box that appeared to magically shrink any toy placed inside it. The children were delighted by it. Months later, the researchers came back and asked them to describe the machine. And here was the catch that changed everything. The children could only describe it using the words they had already known on the day they first saw it. If a child had no word for something back then, that child simply could not reach back and translate the memory into language now, even after learning the missing word. The memory stayed sealed inside the moment it was made. Without the words to wrap around it, it could not be carried forward into the future. So part of your infancy is locked away for a simple reason. You lived it before you had the language to hold on to it. And there is a third layer underneath even that one, and it is easy to miss completely. Your earliest memories are not shaped by your brain alone. They are shaped by the culture that raised you. A researcher named Chi Wang compared the earliest memories of adults who grew up in very different parts of the world. People raised in families that tell long, detailed personal stories about a child's day tended to carry earlier first memories. People raised in cultures that place less weight on the individual self tended to have later ones, sometimes by a margin of years. The age your memory switches on is not a fixed setting you were born with. It bends, depending on how the people around you spoke to you long before you could ever speak back. And here is something stranger still about the one early memory you think you do have. There is a real chance it never happened, not the way you remember it. When adults are asked to describe their single earliest memory, a surprising share of those memories turn out to be reconstructions, quietly stitched together from an old photograph, from a story a parent told 100 times, from a home video watched on a loop. Your mind takes the scattered fragments and builds a whole scene around them, then hands it back to you labeled as a true memory. You were not lying. Your brain simply filled the empty room with the most likely furniture. So even the beginning you think you remember may be a story about you rather than a memory that truly belongs to you. So who actually decided where your memory would begin? Partly your neurons, partly your missing words, and partly the voices that leaned over your crib. Now here is the twist that turns the entire thing inside out. Those forgotten years did not vanish without leaving a single trace. They are the hidden foundation that everything else in you was built on top of. You cannot remember learning that a face leaning over you means safety, but you trust faces. You cannot remember the thousands of separate times you cried and were lifted up and held, but the deep expectation that comfort will come when you reach for it was written into you during exactly those forgotten months. Researchers who study early development, including the psychologist Patricia Bauer, have shown that infants form real, lasting patterns long before they can form a single memory you could ever consciously recall. Bauer also traced the strange shape of the forgetting itself. Young children, she found, actually hold far more of their early life than adults do and then lose great chunks of it as they cross into later childhood. The specific events drain away. The mark those events left behind does not. Your sense of whether the world is basically safe or basically dangerous, your reflex to lean toward people or to pull quietly back, the deepest grooves of your personality were carved into you inside a room you will never get to see again. Think hard about what that actually means. The version of you that you cannot remember is the exact version that shaped every single version who came after. You are not missing those years, you are made out of them. And this is the place where it reaches forward and touches the life you are living right now, today. Every time you flinch a half second before you have any reason to. Every time a particular smell or an old song strikes you with a feeling you cannot explain or trace. Every time you feel instantly safe with someone you only just met, or uneasy around someone for no reason you can name. You may be feeling the faint echo of a memory you will never consciously reach again. Your earliest past did not disappear. It went underground. It quietly stopped being something you remember, and it became something you simply are. So the next time you find a photograph of yourself as a small child, laughing at something just outside the frame, do not look at it as a picture of a stranger. That child did not forget you. That child quietly became you. You remember none of it, and you are carrying every last piece of it.